I'll be honest with you right now, before anything else, because I think you need to understand the lens I'm bringing to this. I've covered enough NFL off-seasons to have built up real scar tissue from false dawns and manufactured optimism. I know exactly what it looks like when the press conference language is doing all the heavy lifting, and the actual football evidence underneath is too thin to support the weight being placed on it. I've watched too many promising springs collapse into brutal falls to let myself get swept into early momentum that turns out to be aesthetic rather than structural. So when I tell you that what I've been watching come out of the Las Vegas Raiders rookie minicamp has genuinely shifted something in how I think about this franchise's immediate future, understand what it cost me to say that. This is not performed enthusiasm. Something real is happening in that desert facility, and I want to walk you through exactly what I've seen and why it hasn't left my mind since the footage started coming through. Everything starts with Fernando Mendoza, number 15, silver and black, standing on a practice field in the Nevada heat with a presence that communicates something important about a player's relationship with high-pressure moments before a single competitive snap has been taken. Now I want to be careful because the cynical version of minicamp evaluation is always available and never entirely wrong. It's May. Nobody is rushing off the edge unblocked. The consequences of individual decisions are largely theoretical in these controlled conditions. I carry that awareness into every evaluation I do this early in the calendar, but here's what years of watching quarterbacks in these environments has taught me. Controlled conditions don't hide the architectural foundation, they expose it. When the full competitive weight of a real season isn't pressing down yet, you get the clearest possible look at what the structure is actually made of. And what I saw in Mendoza's foundation made me feel something I genuinely haven't felt watching a Raiders quarterback work through practice reps in a very long time. The ball placement was sharp and consistent in the way that only comes from authentic accuracy built on real repetition over years of development. His throws had physical crispness and genuine intention behind them. Watching him move through timing concepts and basic offensive structure, even at this earliest stage of the professional process, carried the unmistakable signature of a quarterback who has been processing football at a high level for a sustained period and brought that processing into a new environment intact. There is a specific quality to watching a genuinely talented passer operate through foundational material that resists precise description, but becomes immediately recognizable once you've spent enough time observing its absence in players who simply don't have it. Mendoza has it. It showed up clearly, and it has not left my thinking since. But here's where this story separates itself from the comfortable spring optimism I've trained myself to distrust. Reports emerged about what Mendoza does after the official practice day ends, not what he does in front of cameras when the organizational machinery of a minicamp is running and external accountability is visible. What he does when the workday is technically finished, and the most natural response in the world would be to let his body recover for the next morning. He has been working through under-center snaps with the offensive linemen and centers in the evenings. 25 to 50 additional reps per night, voluntarily grinding through the specific mechanical and timing elements of a skill set, flagged early in his pre-draft evaluation as requiring deliberate professional development coming out of a spread-heavy college system. No cameras, no organizational instruction. As the first overall pick in the NFL draft, a designation that has historically carried an implicit license to lean on the credibility of your selection and let the franchise's investment do some of the public relations work on your behalf. He is not using that license at all. He addressed it directly with reporters, and the specific quality of how he talked about it is the detail I keep returning to. He acknowledged the development area with complete openness. No hedging, no deflection toward external factors. He described the work with the centers as genuinely productive and actively ongoing. He made clear, without any discomfort about the public admission, that the extra reps happen every single day, regardless of whether anyone with a camera is present to observe it. I want to stay with this for a moment because it reveals something about this specific human being that no combined measurement or film session can fully capture. Under-center mechanics are not a talent problem. They're a repetition problem, a muscle memory problem. The only real solution is the unglamorous, unobservable work of doing it thousands of times until the body stops processing it consciously and starts executing it automatically. That work generates no highlights, trends nowhere, and earns no external reward whatsoever. A 22-year-old who has just been selected first overall, voluntarily taking additional snaps in a hotel because he identified a gap between where he currently is and where the professional position demands he be, is showing you his competitive DNA in the clearest language available. What a player chooses to do when nobody is keeping score tells you more about what they'll do when everything is on the line than any formal evaluation environment ever could. Then there was the White House moment, and I want to give this serious attention completely separate from the football evaluation because it says something important about who has arrived in Las Vegas. Mendoza was asked about potentially attending the ceremony celebrating the Indiana National Championship. His college teammates are going. He has every social right, every human justification, and more than enough goodwill inside that building to attend, without a single person holding it against him. His answer was essentially this: as a rookie entering a professional hierarchy at its lowest rung regardless of draft position, choosing a personal occasion over team obligations would not reflect the kind of player he intends to be right now. He talked about his responsibility to serve the people around him through consistent daily presence and consistent daily work. This is the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Fresh off a national championship, more public goodwill available to spend than almost any young player entering professional football at this moment. And he is voluntarily choosing to define himself through humility and availability rather than through the status his selection would easily and justifiably support. That is not a press conference performance. That is a person telling you exactly who they are. I've been around enough locker rooms to understand how genuinely rare that combination actually is. Talent at the professional level is not rare because the evaluation process filters for it with extraordinary precision. Reasonable work ethic is fairly common because most players who reach this level did so partly through outworking competition at earlier stages. But genuine humility in a first overall pick, the kind that actually shapes daily decisions, rather than the kind performed at press conferences and abandoned the moment cameras leave, that is uncommon in ways that matter practically and deeply. The player who keeps choosing work over recognition in May is the same player who keeps making the right competitive decisions in November when the season is heavy and the shortcuts start looking attractive. Character expressed under low-pressure conditions is the most reliable predictor of behavior under high-pressure conditions that exist in professional sports evaluation. What Mendoza is showing in these first weeks is a profile that will serve this franchise for a long time if the football develops the way the early evidence suggests it can. Let me move to German McCoy because his minicamp presence generated a conversation that deserves more careful handling than most coverage provided. He didn't participate on day one. He came out in limited capacity on day two, and the instinctive reaction when you see a player working through drills with a known medical situation attached to his name is to focus immediately on the limitation. What I want you to focus on instead is what he was actually doing on the field: punt return drills, and there is straightforward medical logic that applies directly here. You do not put a player with a surgically significant knee situation through the physical demands of return specialist work unless the medical professionals responsible for his long-term health have genuine evidence-based confidence in where his body currently is. The risk-reward calculation doesn't support it otherwise. The organizational liability doesn't support it. The fact that the Raiders were comfortable enough with McCoy's physical status to allow him to participate in those specific drills is itself meaningful medical information, regardless of what the most alarming early reports implied. His talent profile before the medical concerns surfaced was that of a top corner prospect. Those concerns drove him to the fourth round. If they carry less immediate urgency than initially feared, the Raiders may have acquired starter caliber ability at a fraction of the capital that ability would have commanded in a clean medical environment. That is organizational research doing exactly what rigorous research is supposed to do. Karen Crawford's absence from day two generated alarm that the actual facts simply didn't support. The coaching staff made a workload management decision based on the volume he had accumulated the day before. They pulled his reps as a protective measure in a non-contact environment where building unnecessary physical stress on a young player's body serves no competitive purpose at this calendar stage. What is worth your attention is what Crawford said at the podium. He described himself as violent and physical, which is the correct self-description for an edge rusher communicating his professional identity. He talked about treating every available rep as an educational opportunity rather than a performance showcase. He talked about bringing genuine disruptive intent to every snap, regardless of the competitive stakes of any specific practice moment. That combination of physical aggression and intellectual honesty about the developmental gap between where he is and where the professional position demands he eventually be is exactly the mentality that separates edge rushers who develop into real contributors from those with identical tools who never translate them into consistent NFL production. Mike Washington caught my attention in the running back footage for a specific reason. There's a difference that matters enormously in evaluating backs at this stage, and it's the difference between athleticism compensating for technical deficiencies and athleticism operating on top of a technically sound movement foundation. The first kind looks impressive in limited context and breaks breaks down as defensive sophistication increases. The second kind looks natural across a wider range of situations because the technique is doing the structural work it's supposed to do and the physical gifts are functioning on top of a stable base. What I saw from Washington suggested the second thing: the fluidity through fundamental movement sequences, the quickness that appeared without looking mechanical or forced, the way he processed basic concepts without the self-conscious quality that marks players who haven't yet internalized what's being asked of them. For a back with genuine home run speed to also look naturally comfortable in foundational work is an encouraging early indicator of how that talent might hold up as the competitive environment becomes more demanding. Let me say something about the broader atmosphere coming out of that Las Vegas facility, because I think it's ultimately the most important thing I can communicate and also the hardest to capture through individual player observations alone. There is a genuinely different quality to what is building in that building, and I've been around enough situations over enough years to feel the real difference between something structural and something manufactured to fill a slow news window. Klint Kubiak has established a philosophical foundation with actual teeth. The standard he set from day one, where earned distinction separates players in ways that are visible and real and not negotiable based on draft slot or contract value, is the kind of standard that changes daily competitive behavior because the players can see the accountability operating around them in real time. The shield not sitting on every helmet during practice is not a marketing campaign. It is a daily visible signal of what this coaching staff genuinely believes about how winning cultures get constructed, and it is shaping how players in that building relate to their own daily work in ways that will compound across an entire season. And at the center of every single day of all of it is a 22-year-old choosing to spend his evenings doing additional snaps when he could reasonably be doing almost anything else, who declined a White House invitation because attending it didn't align with his honest understanding of who he needs to be in this building right now, who acknowledged a mechanical development area publicly without a moment of discomfort and described the work he's doing to close it every single day, who carries himself on the practice field with the settled purpose of a player who knows exactly why he's there, completely independent of what his draft position might suggest he's entitled to coast on. I've been waiting for something that feels genuinely different in Las Vegas for a long time. The accumulated skepticism from previous seasons doesn't disappear because the early evidence looks promising. But the early evidence does look different, not in the rhetorical ways that evaporate under real competitive pressure, but in the specific and observable ways that actually carry predictive weight. The quarterback fits the system organically. The head coach has a coherent identity and the organizational alignment to act on it. The front office is building with patience rather than reactive desperation. Fernando Mendoza is earning his designation one quiet evening at a time, one humble press conference answer at a time, one unobserved choice of work over recognition at a time. In my experience, that is exactly what the beginning of something real looks like before the results arrive and make it obvious to everyone who wasn't paying close enough attention to see it taking shape.